And evening, folks. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show here on Newsmax TV. The era of unaccountability is upon us. Now that socialists run our government, there will be no talk of accountability for their unscientific or deadly policy prescriptions. Case in point, Governor Andrew Cuomo. Here's a guy who thought it would be a great idea to put infected China virus patients into nursing homes, places that housed senior citizens, the people most susceptible to dying from the China virus. To add insult to injury, COVID Cuomo decided he'd try to hide the full scope of his disastrous decisions. COVID Cuomo's actions during the height of the pandemic were praised by none other than Joe Biden. ABC's This Week asked Biden's mouthpiece, Jen Psaki, if Biden still thought Cuomo was still worthy of that praise.
Governor of New York's done one hell of a job. I think he's sort of the gold standard.
So does President Biden still consider Andrew Cuomo the gold standard when it comes to leadership on the pandemic?
Well, John, we work with Governor Cuomo just like we work with governors across the country. He's also chair of the NGA, so he plays an important role in ensuring that we're coordinating closely and getting assistance out to people of his state and to states across the country.
All right, but Jen, my question was, does President Biden still believe that Andrew Cuomo is the gold standard, represents the gold standard on leadership during this pandemic? Just a yes or no. Does he
well, John, the president, well, it doesn't always have to be a yes or no answer, John.
Could President Trump's press person gotten away with telling the inquisitive press that a yes or no question doesn't deserve a yes or no answer? Of course not. But this is how left-wing government works. No matter how much damage they do to you, your family, your nation, they should never have to pay a price or answer a question for it. That leads to a very simple question for all of you, we the people. Aren't you tired of government harming you? That's the question we ask in tonight's preamble. There are varied reasons and causes, depending on the level of government we're talking about, that gives clear signals to the American people that our own government can no longer be trusted to look out for our best interests. If I had to narrow down a cause, it would be left-wing treachery and GOP indifference. Let's start with my home state, the great state of Texas. Texas decided to pull a California, leaving millions of its citizens vulnerable to an historic round of frigid weather. While overnight lows plunged to below zero, the power in the state of Texas just up and quit. There was some physical damage to equipment, to be sure, but the bulk of the outage was caused by Texas and its investments and over-reliance on so-called alternative energy. According to one lawmaker, the state has invested $19 billion toward unreliable green energy. Now, that money should have been used to safeguard current clean-burning natural gas plants and building new clean-burning natural gas plants. That bears repeating. Texas has spent $19 billion on unreliable alternative energy in recent years, but Texas has not built one reliable gas-fired power plant in the last 7 years. Why? As mentioned, natural gas, an energy source that Texas has in abundance, is clean burning and would have nearly no impact on the environment, even if you're silly enough to base public policy and American lives on the unproven theory of man-made global warming. Natural gas is nothing but a clean, reliable, and stable source of energy. Thanks to President Obama, the federal government has been using our tax dollars to pay for the dismantling of our dependable power generation capability, replacing it with so-called alternative energy sources that produce power at the whims of Mother Nature. But as any third grader can tell you, the sun doesn't always shine, nor does the wind always blow. It's an elementary fact lost on childlike politicians. Would it surprise you to know that a few elected leaders have been acting like grown-ups and have been pushing to modernize the Texas grid for nearly a decade now? We'll talk to a few of them in minutes. But they've been thwarted by these energy companies that paid off elected officials to commission studies rather than make sure Texas has the base load capacity to provide reliable power to all of its citizens in all weather conditions. Further, Texas has a free market for energy, allegedly. But because of the federal government's interference in that free market, Texans suffer while energy companies get rich. The Texas energy market is distorted by massive federal subsidies. That's a fancy word for wasted taxpayer money, your hard-earned dollars. These subsidies often cause the price of electricity to go negative. That is, wind farms in Texas will actually pay utilities to take electricity off their hands. Now, this, of course, destroys the competitiveness of reliable energy sources, leaving the population at risk. The unofficial death toll from this latest disaster sits at over 24, according to Texas officials. Were those lost lives worth it? Was all of the lost productivity worth it? This is a headline from the Babylon Bee. It's a satirical website, and the humor is biting because it's true. Texas is now a laughingstock of the nation, just like California is. In California, they can't keep the lights on either because of their over-reliance on unreliable power sources. Plus, California allows wildfires to burn down their state every season because they have to please the fanatical and unscientific environmentalist nut jobs who won't allow California to be good stewards of their own forests. Even when the Bush administration brokered a deal with paper companies to clear the dead underbrush, create fire breaks at no cost to taxpayers, the left wing, they went crazy. They howled because they didn't want the private companies to profit off the raw materials. Hence, more rolling blackouts in California, more death every fire season in California. Here's a question to all of you environmentalist Nazis out there. If we could just save one life, aren't reliable, clean burning power plants worth it in Texas, in California? Well, not according to politicians in both parties. That leads me to the federal government and the third term of Barack Hussein Obama. Joe Biden and his knuckle-dragging leftists tell America that we must suffer. And in the cases of California and Texas, we must die to save the planet. Remember, natural gas is a clean burning fuel. It's abundant in the United States, but Biden and his minions say they want to ban fracking, an advanced method of extracting gas. Now, if you're not an uninformed liberal, you know that natural gas is what we call a bridge fuel, meaning natural gas can serve as a transition fuel from coal and oil to technology like wind, solar, nuclear fusion, and fuel cells. I say natural gas is a bridge fuel because, well, those alternative sources I mentioned, they're not ready for prime time. And until they are ready, we have to rely on more dependable sources, else people die like they did in Texas. Sadly, we're prohibited from using clean natural gas by the very same mental midgets who make the deadly wildfires a certainty every season in California. But that's not all of the government insanity that is harming the citizens of these United States. Joe Biden, or whoever's writing his anti-American policies, say that, well, he's going to fight illegal immigration by making illegal immigration legal. He also wants to eliminate the term illegal alien from the nation's laws. The leftists in the Biden administration are trying to erase our borders because that's what enemy nations like China, Russia, Iran, and others, that's what they want us to do. Our freedom and liberty have been a thorn in totalitarian sides for far too long. Biden and his people believe that too. Biden wants to allow illegal alien criminals to come into the United States. He wants to keep them here if they harm Americans. And he's even catching and releasing illegal aliens into the United States without checking to see if they are carrying the China virus. But Biden and his merry band of Marxist-Leninists, they don't care about how much harm they do to Americans. Why? Because I think Biden and his Democrats are pledged to deliver for America's enemies. They have similar worldviews. Mr. Biden says he wants to fight gun crime and gun violence. He doesn't want to do that by targeting criminals. No, that would make too much sense. He wants to target all of you, the law-abiding citizens of this country. His proposed gun restrictions would result in Americans being made vulnerable to the criminals in our society. Our communities and families will pay with their lives because they will be unable to defend themselves from criminals in the United States. Just this weekend, several armed bystanders, good guys, successfully stopped a shooting spree in a New Orleans suburb. 3 people, including the shooter, lost their lives. The death toll could have been far higher and will be far higher in the future if Biden succeeds in taking away Americans' right of self-defense. Real Americans know that criminals don't follow gun laws. That's why we call them criminals. Socialist Democrats believe that their anti-American, anti-freedom agenda is essential. And if a whole bunch of people have to pay with their safety and lives, so be it. just as long as leftists aren't the ones dying. If we only had a political party that wasn't too old, tired, and lifeless to combat these socialists who are harming Americans. Unfortunately, all we have is the Republican Party, led by Mitt Romney, Ben Sasse, Mitch McConnell, Liz Cheney, Fred Upton, and Pat Toomey. They're too busy attacking President Trump and his supporters. Hence, they are too busy to defend America from our real enemies. Which political party is worse? The socialists who are harming us, or the Republicans who refuse to stop them? I'll leave that up to you to decide. For now, I'm simply done with our government working to harm us. I'm tired of our government taking our money and prioritizing foreign nationals and stealing our rights. What are our rights? The founders of this country told us in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. By any objective measure, our government is failing to meet the Founding Fathers' standards. The only thing that can turn this around is all of you to come off the sidelines, start organizing, and by God, take back your government. Because this government has grown beyond the consent of the governed.